In multiple security systems, something was recorded that should not have been possible. Security cameras are built to observe, not interpret. They do not imagine. They do not assume. Movement triggers sensors. Access logs record entries. Time advances 1 second at a time. So when these systems behave normally, but the result makes no sense, the problem is not failure. The problem is that the system accepts it as real. Case 1. Security cameras are built to observe, not interpret. They do not imagine. They do not assume. They only record what their systems detect. Movement triggers motion sensors. Access logs record entries. Timestamps progress 1 second at a time. These are closed systems. They rely on rules. Across different locations, different years, and different camera models, a pattern appears in the footage we are about to examine. Not dramatic moments, not fast movement, not chaos, something quieter. Moments where the system behaves normally, but the result does not make sense. In one recording, a hallway is empty. The lighting is stable. The camera angle does not change. An access log records to entries. Only one person appears on screen. There is no second figure entering the frame, no reflection in the glass, no shadow crossing the floor. The system logs the event as valid. No error is flagged. In another case, an object changes position between frames. The camera is fixed, the surface is clean, no debris is visible. The expected impact never appears. There is no bounce, no slide, no follow-up motion. The footage continues as if nothing unusual occurred. Then there is time. Many systems synchronize automatically. They update timestamps every second using internal clocks. In one recording, the seconds advance normally, and the timestamp shifts backward. The video does not cut. There is no loss of data. Audio remains continuous. Only the time changes direction. No alert appears in the system log. These recordings do not come from one location. They are not tied to a single manufacturer. They were not collected for the same purpose. Some were reviewed during routine audits. Others surfaced during unrelated investigations. Each system was tested after the incident. No malfunction was confirmed. This documentary is not about what these events mean. It is about what was recorded, what the camera saw, what the logs confirmed, and what the system could not explain. Because when documentation conflicts with expectation, the question is not what happened. The question is why the system accepted it as real. Case 2. Before reviewing individual incidents, it is important to understand how these systems normally operate. Modern security cameras rely on layered logic. Motion detection triggers recording. Access points generate digital logs. Internal clocks synchronize timestamps. Each layer confirms the others. If a person enters a secured space, 3 things usually happen. The camera records movement. The access system logs an entry, so the timestamp aligns with both. When one layer fails, the system flags it. The cases reviewed in this documentary did not trigger those alerts. The footage comes from mixed environments. Office corridors, parking structures, utility buildings, restricted storage areas. Most locations were monitored continuously. No manual camera control was used at the time of recording. No remote access was detected. In several cases, the cameras were mounted in single entry zones. One door, one hallway, one camera angle. These areas were chosen for security precisely because movement is limited and predictable. The recordings span more than a decade. Some date back to the early 2010s, others are less than 5 years old. Different manufacturers were involved. Different storage formats, different motion detection methods. What they share is how they were discovered. None of the footage was flagged as unusual at the time it was recorded. The clips were found later. During routine maintenance reviews, during system upgrades, during internal audits following unrelated events. In one case, a security contractor noticed a mismatch between access logs and recorded footage while validating badge activity. The system showed 2 successful entries within seconds. The video showed one person. In another, a facilities manager reviewing overnight footage noticed a timestamp anomaly while checking for lighting issues. The video continued smoothly. Only the clock behaved differently. After discovery, standard procedures were followed. Systems were tested. Cameras were recalibrated. Clocks were reset. Logs were reviewed. No corruption was found. No tampering was confirmed. Most importantly, the systems continued functioning normally afterward. There were no repeated failures, no recurring glitches, no pattern that could be replicated on demand. That lack of repetition is part of the problem, because system errors usually repeat. Faulty sensors trigger false alerts again and again. Clock drift creates predictable offsets. Data loss leaves visible gaps. These recordings show none of that. Each incident appears isolated. Single moment where expected behavior did not occur, surrounded by hours of normal footage that makes context critical. These are not abandoned buildings. They're not unsecured spaces. They are monitored locations designed to reduce uncertainty, which raises the question: if the environment is controlled, the system is verified, and the footage is continuous, what exactly changed in that moment? Case 3. The first incident occurs in a secured interior corridor. The camera is mounted high, facing a single access door. The field of view includes the full doorway, the hallway floor, and the far wall. There are no blind spots, according to system records. The recording begins at 1:52 a.m. The environment is stable. Lighting remains constant. No background movement is visible. At 1 hour 52 minutes and 14 seconds, the access log records a successful entry. The door opens. One individual steps into the hallway. The subject is clearly visible. Adult height, wearing a jacket and dark pants. The door closes behind them. The camera continues, recording as expected. At 1 hour 52 minutes and 18 seconds, the access system records a second entry. Same door, same access point. 4 seconds later, on the video, nothing changes. The hallway remains empty except for the original subject, who is already walking away from the door. There is no second opening of the door. No second figure appears in frame. The camera angle does not shift. There's no exposure change, no dropped frames. The timestamp continues forward without interruption. At 1 hour 52 minutes and 30 seconds, the subject exits the frame at the far end of the hallway. The recording ends normally. When the footage is reviewed frame by frame, the result is the same. One entry event is visible. 2 entries are logged. The access system treats both as valid. No forced entry is recorded. No denied attempt appears in the log. The second incident involves a static camera mounted in a storage area. A small object rests on a flat surface near the center of the frame. There is no vibration, no airflow source, no human presence. Between 2 frames, the object is no longer in its original position. There is no visible fall. No impact is shown. No sound spike appears in the audio track. The object simply appears elsewhere. The system logs no motion alert at the moment of change. Recording continues as if nothing occurred. The third incident centers on time. Parking structure camera records an empty level overnight. The timestamp increments second by second. At 3 hours 16 minutes and 42 seconds, the display shifts backward to 3 hours 16 minutes and 39 seconds. The footage does not reset. There is no cut. Audio remains continuous. 3 seconds later, the timestamp resumes forward motion. System logs show no clock adjustment. No synchronization event is recorded. In all 3 cases, the primary evidence is consistent. The video files are intact. The metadata is present. The logs confirm normal operation. What is missing is a cause. No visible trigger, no recorded error, no system explanation. It's only a record of events that the system accepted as real. Case 4. After the incidents were identified, each system was examined separately. The first step was file integrity. The original video files were checked for corruption. Hash values matched archived backups. No missing frames were detected. Compression artifacts remained consistent throughout each clip. There was no indication of editing or splicing. Next, access logs were reviewed. In the hallway incident, both entries were logged as successful. Each record included a valid credential ID. Each included a timestamp accurate to the second. No denied access attempt appeared between them. If the second entry were an error, the system would normally flag it. It did not. The door sensor was tested. Opening and closing events were verified. The sensor responded correctly during testing. No phantom triggers were recorded before or after the incident. The contradiction remains. The system requires physical door movement to generate an entry log. The video shows 1 opening, 2 entries exist. In the storage area case, Attention shifted to environmental factors. Airflow was measured. The room's ventilation system was inactive at the time. No pressure change was logged. The surface where the object rested showed no marks, no scratches, no debris. If the object had fallen even slightly, the surface should show disturbance. It does not. Motion detection thresholds were reviewed. The system did not register the change as motion. That is significant. Even small disturbances usually trigger a low-level alert. Here there is nothing. The time anomaly presented a different problem. Digital clocks can drift. They can desynchronize. But corrections are logged. In this case, no synchronization event appears. The internal clock log shows stable operation before and after the timestamp reversal. There is no restart. There's no firmware update. No manual adjustment. The contradiction is not that time moved backward. It is that the system recorded it without acknowledging a correction. Investigators then looked for patterns. Were these cameras on the same network? No. Were they using the same software? No. Were the events recorded at similar times? Only loosely? Were there repeated incidents at the same locations? None were found? That absence matters. Technical failures usually repeat. They leave fingerprints. A faulty sensor produces consistent errors. Clock drift creates predictable offsets. Corruption spreads across files. These events are isolated. Each occurs once, surrounded by hours or days of normal operation. The systems behave exactly as designed except for a single moment. That is the core contradiction. The evidence supports that the recordings are authentic. The systems confirm their own data. What they do not provide is an explanation that fits all layers at once. When logs, footage, and system status agree, but logic does not, the question changes, not what failed, but which assumption was wrong. Case 5. When evidence does not align, investigators turn to possibilities, not answers. Only frameworks that might explain what was recorded. The first theory is system-level misinterpretation. Modern security systems do not see in the human sense. They translate signals into events. A badge read does not confirm a body. It confirms data. In the hallway case, it is possible that the second entry log reflects a duplicated credential signal rather than a second person. A delayed transmission. A brief echo in the access reader. A momentary overlap between systems. Yet this theory struggles with one detail. Duplicated signals are usually flagged. They create warnings, they leave patterns. Here the system accepted the second entry as normal and unique. The second theory involves synchronization conflict. Cameras, access logs, and timestamps often rely on separate internal clocks. If two clocks briefly disagreed, the system might align events incorrectly. An entry could be logged out of sequence. Timestamp could appear to move backward. This theory fits parts of the time anomaly. But again, there is a problem. Clock conflicts are logged. They trigger resynchronization events. No such events appear. The third theory is environmental interference, electrical noise, signal overlap, transient interference from nearby systems. These can affect sensors without leaving lasting damage. They can cause brief anomalies. But environmental interference usually affects more than one signal. Here, only specific elements are affected. The camera remains stable. The audio remains continuous. The logs remain intact. Only one rule breaks at a time. That selective failure is difficult to explain. There are other theories. Human error during review, misinterpretation of footage, incomplete context. Each was considered. Frame-by-frame analysis was performed. Multiple reviewers examined the same clips independently. The observations remained consistent. What is most striking is not what these recordings show, it is what they do not show. No panic, no reaction, no system alarm. The systems behave as if everything is normal. They record, they log, they continue. Which brings us back to the original question. Security cameras are designed to document reality. They do not decide what is possible, they only apply rules. When those rules are followed, and the result still does not make sense, the uncertainty remains. These recordings were archived. No official explanation was released. The systems remain in use. Footage still exists. This is not a story about what happened. It is a record of what was accepted as real. The question it leaves behind is simple. If documentation defines reality, what happens when reality does not follow the documentation? This is dark signal. No conclusion was reached.